Hey, my friend, and welcome to the Life Switch Show. And before I do my normal rundown of my guest and everything, let me just say, guys, if you're watching this, I want to make a big shout out for Cruise Creative. They're helping me run this show. They're amazing producers and they're making this show happen every single week. They're finding great guests to come on and everything. Like, I can probably have a whole show just about them. Anyway, I just really wanted to say that today because I'm super grateful for what they do. Now, my guest today is Sarah Manuel, and we're going to be discussing the power of being different. Sarah lived her life in a wheelchair due to a genetic disease, and she was not supposed to live past 4 or 5 years. And growing up, she hated being different from everyone else, and she was in complete denial about her disability. When she finally accepted her difference, that's when Sarah realized she was made different on purpose. She wasn't a mistake. She was finally able to find and live her purpose in life. All right, so before we begin, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell. That way you get notified every time we go live. Plus, you will also be notified every time we release any other content. And if you're watching on Facebook, that is a fantastic place to see this and catch this show. And make sure then that you like and subscribe to my Facebook page, Adam Kavalik, Business Mindset Coach. Now, so please let me introduce my guest for today, Sarah Manuel, life coach, speaker, and overcomer. A big welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Adam. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I am really glad you're here. It's been some time in the making because I remember the first time I received your email. It's quite a while ago, and we've been putting this together for quite some time.
Yeah, and the wait was worth it.
Yeah. Well, likewise, I have to say, I'm really happy that you're here. This is not your first podcast. I know that you do. You've done a couple of these. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Just in the past couple months, I've done several because people are responding to my story in a way that is awe-inspiring to me. It's almost surprising how much positivity I've gotten from sharing my stories. So it's exciting.
Well, it is, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, and I'm sure that anyone watching right now are gonna share that experience themselves. So we've got people checking in from all over the world. We've got some really hardcore fans of this show. So anyone watching live right now, please let us know in the comments where you are in the world. And if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, just comment in the comment sections. That way your comments shows up. If you've got questions or something you want to share with us, you can leave that as a comment as well. That way me or Sarah can then interact with that, possibly answer your questions. All right. So Sarah, I gave a very short, very small introduction of who you are. And I kind of like to give you the word to add to that story, to your own story, as you started out saying?
Yeah, so I was born with spinal muscular atrophy. It's one of the 40 muscular dystrophy diseases. It's actually the number one genetic killer of kids under the age of 2. So when my parents got the diagnosis, I wasn't supposed to live past 4 or 5, like you said. And the way that this disease manifests in my day-to-day life is I'm very weak. So like 1 pound of weight is heavy for me. My disease is progressive, meaning that I'm stronger today than I will be in 5 or 10 years from now. And I live my life in a wheelchair. So I grew up in a very small town. I grew up in the house my dad grew up in, and there were like no more than 1,000 people that live in the town. So when I was born and diagnosed, and I was just already part of the community, and there was no question that I would go to school with everyone else and I would kind of participate in things that I could participate in. An example of this was in middle school when the kids started playing sports. the girl, I couldn't play volleyball, but I could keep score. And in high school, I wanted to be a cheerleader. I couldn't do that, but I was able to be the mascot. So I was really good at finding my entry point, so I could participate in the things that all the other kids did participate in. So I didn't really start to feel left out or really, really different until my classmates started driving, because I couldn't just hop in the car and go with them, to a party or to lunch or whatever. But what I noticed was that I hated being different. And when I was in my small town, I was the only person that I knew of in a wheelchair, so I could kind of pretend that it didn't exist, especially because I was getting to participate with, in everything that all the other kids were participating in. In my mind, I was no different than anyone else, and I was very happy to be that way. But then, like, this denial was so great. Like, I would literally, forget that I was in a wheelchair. I would call to make reservations somewhere, and after the fact, my parents would say, "Well, is it wheelchair accessible?" I'd be like, "I don't know. I didn't ask. Why would I need to ask that?" So after I, kind of got over my, I guess I am different, I'd call back and find out, and we would go from there. But it seems absurd to say that I could deny that I was different in the wheelchair, because it's like so blunt, right in your face, right? But the mind can do powerful things, especially when you want it to. Mm. So this just kind of continued. And when I would be in, because I was in my small town, I never really came into contact with anybody else who was obviously disabled. So when we would go to the city or whatever, and I would see someone who was had a disability, I would feel very uncomfortable because I couldn't deny my own disability. It was like looking in a mirror, and I didn't like it. I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be disabled or in a wheelchair. I didn't want it to be. And then there was one day I was working a terrible job as a customer service representative for a health insurance company. And I was working 40 plus hours a week, and my arms, because of my disease and my weakness, couldn't keep up with that. And I got to a point where I couldn't do that job anymore. The doctors told me I wasn't going back. And part of me was relieved because I hated the job, but it was a place to go and it was something to do. And it, I paid my bill, I think everybody has, a job that they hate at some point in their lives. But then I was like, now what? Now, my disability again causes me to be different than everyone else. And I'm just kind of like in this crisis moment. And I just remember feeling this warm, calm, peaceful feeling come over me. And I realized that I was in a wheelchair because I was supposed to be. There was a purpose to it, and I wasn't a mistake. And as soon as I realized that I wasn't a mistake and there was a greater purpose to this whole thing, I didn't know what that purpose was yet, but I just felt this sense of peace come over me. It's like, okay, I can deal with this. I can face what's coming. And I did it again. The mind is amazing. When I was able to kind of harness that knowledge that I wasn't a mistake, that piece of it was critical for me. I was able to realize that, I could do really, really great things for other people with disabilities. And I went from being really uncomfortable to being around other people with disabilities to now I work as a school psychologist, and I identify kids with disabilities and I advocate for them and their families. So it was this complete shift. And when I was able to accept who I was, every part of me, even the parts I didn't like, that's when my purpose opened up for me. And I think that's a message that a lot of people can take, because I think there's part of ourselves that we deny because we want to fit in with society or with our group of friends or whatever. We all hide part of ourselves. And if we can, instead of being ashamed or embarrassed of that side of ourselves, if we can embrace it and celebrate it and kind of figure out why we were given that side, I think that's where the gold is. That's where our purpose is.
I love that. That's really well put. I mean, I told you, you and I, we shared the green room, the backstage before we got on the show, and I said, I love the topic of today because it's really one of my passions as well. But what you just said, that's really, I like that, how you said that, like kind of when you stop hiding and you realize that your uniqueness is your strength in a way, it it allows you to tap into that purpose. Because it got me thinking, because a lot of times I'll go for, you can create your purpose almost, you can design it. But you're absolutely right. Like your uniqueness is a clue to your purpose, I would imagine. Or at least that's what I took away from what you said.
Absolutely, because if that part of ourselves that is unique is it is different from other people, like there is a reason why that part is different. So investigate that more, figure out what that is, because that is your superpower. That's your secret sauce right there.
Yeah, precisely. Well, first of all, thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story. I think it's a powerful one, definitely. I think, the things that you do, the things you get to talk about and show others the way, I think is just brilliant. With your background, with everything that you've learned about yourself. Can you speak to, like, what's the purpose that you did wake up to finally, or did uncover finally? And maybe you kind of said it, but I'm also interested in unpacking that a bit.
Yes, I think I work with kids that are disabled, and we're talking all kinds of disabilities. We're talking learning disabilities, autism, intellectual disability, physical disabilities like myself. So it runs the whole gamut. And when I talk to one of those kids or one of their family members, and I tell them there will be obstacles, but you can overcome them, like I have this immediate credibility with them, because even though they may not know the ins and outs of my story, they can just look at me and tell that I've done that myself. So I'm not asking them to do anything more than what I've already done. And especially, I think, for somebody with a physical disability, there are these preconceived notions that society has, like you're supposed to just stay at home and not really have any sort of meaningful work. You're not supposed to have a significant other or children, or there's just like a lot of limits that society puts on you. And I have all those things. I tell society, take a hike, because I'm making my own decisions. I'm going to do what feels right for me. And I've always been that way. If somebody tells me no, I figure out a way to prove it to them that I can do it. So when those kids and those families see me, and I'm telling them, you can overcome this, you can do this, you can work with it, it doesn't have to limit you. Like that instant credibility is just so important, and so it means a lot to both of us, because I'm speaking truth and they're hearing, instead of limits, they're hearing possibilities.
Wow. There you go. I mean, again, that is such a powerful vehicle for you to help other people in their own transformations or shifts and changes. I think that is beautiful. And as you said, I mean, this is as much as I knew about you, that you have your own family. You found your great love. You have a son. You have a job. I mean, you have several jobs, because you're a psychologist and you're also a life coach, speaker. So I mean, you challenged all of that.
Yeah, and to me, I've just always kind of it's been like a source of pride for me. Like if somebody tells me I can't do something and I can prove to them that I can, it's like, I fooled you.
Yeah,
It's my sassy stubbornness coming out.
Yeah. Is that part of your personality, you think?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think stubbornness is a negative attribute. For me, it's
No?
definitely proven to be very useful, very powerful, and necessary.
Has it ever gotten you into trouble though?
Of course,
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
of course.
Well, as you know, I think you're absolutely right. I think some of our strongest strengths, they can cast some long shadows, right? So I mean, your stubbornness is a strength, and at the same time, sometimes when they go unchecked, unbalanced, they can get us in
Yeah.
trouble, perhaps. Yeah,
Yes.
but it's a good thing. It's probably served you well, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. Because there have been many times when it would have been easier to just give up or to just be resigned to live a lesser life than what I have envisioned and what I think is my purpose to live. Um, but yeah, I'm not one to give up easily.
Clearly, clearly. Now, which is another amazing thing about your story, the fact that very few people live, beyond 2, 4, or 5 years with your, disability, with genetic disability, and here you are with a family and everything, a career, and doing so much good and making such a big difference in other people's lives as well.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. No, I think I find that super inspiring, and I'm glad to, you're a life coach. I'm a life coach. I'm glad to have you as a colleague in that industry because I think what you can bring to the table, as you said as well, once you have a conversation with someone and you say, there's possibilities. When you say that, I'm sure that you as a vehicle is so powerful for other people's transformations. I want to honor that.
Yeah, and I think especially for kids, they may not take it as like life wisdom. It I think I'm planting seeds, and I think that in the future years I will come back to reap, um, and to sow big time. Because I mean, high school kids, they're so high school, yeah. They're just so independent and they think they know everything. So while they kind of get what I'm saying and they have that credibility, like I don't think it really soaks in to the fullest extent until later years. And there's this one student I worked with 3 years, and now she's graduated from high school and has a family and everything. And I just she comes to me from time to time and she tells me, it's so meaningful when I think back to what the work that we did, and it helped me so much, and like we're still in touch because it was such a strong bond between us. So that's what I love, is seeing them grow and blossom and kind of own who they are. That's incredible.
That is incredible. That's amazing. So, I mean, okay, so in your own realization, when you, as you described it, you felt that calm washing over you almost, realizing that you're actually here on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what triggered you to start leaning into this work that you do around life purpose? Or can you tell me a little bit about that backstory?
Yeah, so I have a dear friend who is my maid of honor, and we would for fun, we just like talking about what things mean and what this could have meant, for our future, meaning, just like we like to dissect things and take things apart and analyze them. And it's just something that we've always done. And then when I was in the position of where I had to figure out where I was going next with my career, my work, I started thinking about counseling, because that's kind of what we were doing. We were counseling each other without even knowing that we were doing it. And when I was looking at that, because I wanted to work in the schools, because for one, I knew that the shorter work calendar would be good for my body, because, the weakness, it would give me time to recover, having all that off time. And I loved my high school counselor because she just had such a positive way about her. I liked being around her, and I wanted to be that type of person for kids. And then I discovered in the program that was at the university, well, if you go one more year, you become a school psychologist. So I looked into that and it's like, oh, so I could be identifying kids with disabilities and just like discovering what that role would be. And it just seemed to fit me so perfectly, where I could still do a little bit of counseling, but the main core part of that job was helping kids and families through this whole process of, your child isn't going to be this normal, perfect creature that you envisioned when you were pregnant and you brought them into the world. That there's something that isn't, they're going to be a square peg in a round hole. And how do we make that peg fit in that round hole a little bit easier? What can we do to make it not so rough for them? And also to honor the student and the parents through the whole grieving process of that. Because when you find out that your child isn't this perfect creature, which you know that, but to have someone tell you that, it invokes this whole grieving process that I think a lot of people forget. Even if it is a learning disability, that alone, because that means they're going to struggle through school. It's going to be harder for them. It's not going to be this easy, just fun-filled time of memory. It's going to provide a lot of angst also. So honoring that it's different, honoring that those emotions are valid, because I think a lot of people get embarrassed by their emotions. So just honoring that and just kind of meeting them where they are and helping them on their journey, I think has been one of the greatest blessings from my work.
It really sounds like it. That is such an important piece that you're bringing up, allowing people to be okay with what they're going through and feeling, rather than be ashamed of and suppressing and all of that, because that, I would imagine, only hurts the whole, mourning process, coming to terms with, supporting each other. It puts up those walls, or those, walls, I'd say.
Yeah.
You said something about this, being perfect. And it got me thinking, some things that I'm getting from you, based on your story and where you are today and what you're doing, but almost what I'm also sensing from the work you do with parents and children, it's almost like that, their disability, physical, mental, learning disability, is almost like you're showing them or allowing them to see that does not have to determine who they become.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. And I think we all have a disability of some point, or of some sort. It may not be a medical diagnosis or an educational diagnosis, but we all have disabilities, or what I call differences. And if we fight them and fight them and fight them, they become bigger and bigger and bigger. But if we can lean into them, accept them, find ways to celebrate and embrace them, that's when the magic happens.
Why do you think that is? Maybe you don't have a real answer to it, but I'm curious to know. Why do you think that is, that when we fight it, it grows bigger and bigger?
Well, with me, I was fighting something that was clearly there. And the more and more I fought it, the more it seemed like it was this huge mountain I had to overcome. It became a bigger factor in my life than I think it really had to be. But as soon as I just accepted it and worked with it, then it's like, okay, you're not a mountain, you're a molehill. And I can get over a molehill a lot easier than I can get over a mountain. It's still there, and I still have to deal with it. but it's much more manageable, and it's much more like you can dance with it rather than fight it.
That's a good one. I'm almost seeing, like, I'm picturing in my head, for some reason, what came to me is, Bruce Lee said, be like water. Like, because I'm picturing this dam that you build, and the pressure behind that dam just builds and builds and builds because you're trapping it. You're fighting the natural flow of things. But if you allow the water to just be water, and it's fluent and it goes where it needs to go, versus, as I said, versus fighting it, trying to trap it, there is something in that. And I know that I think I've said this in one of the other episodes that we've done. We brought up the psychologist Nathaniel Branden. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
So he's an American psychologist. He did a lot of work around self-esteem, Nathaniel Branden. And he has a saying where he says, you can't leave a place you've never been to. And he talks about that, especially when he talks about emotions. And I think that is such a powerful thing. Again, like, if you don't allow yourself to visit, it's very hard to leave it, right? If you're suppressing it, ignoring it, fighting it, it kind of stays.
Yeah. And I love that image of the water and the dam. Like, that is, that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and I think you're absolutely right. I think at one point, most of us, if not every one of us, will go through a disability, or experience a disability, or, as you call them, a difference. I think that's absolutely true. And I mean, in my case, in school, for example, I had learning disabilities. That was really tough on me. And the really sad part about that, I think, is I allowed that to determine who I was, or who I became. And luckily, down the road, I managed to release that story, and I could actually live into the endless potential that I actually was. And that's when I stopped saying I was stupid, or I couldn't learn, I couldn't do this, I'm not good with math, or whatever. But growing up, I believed all those things were true, and I allowed those things to then determine who I became.
Absolutely. And I strongly believe that our perspectives are not real. They're just stories we tell ourselves. So if we can change the story, if we can change the narrative, then we can change what we consider possible for our lives.
There you go. That is powerful. Can you speak to that a bit? I mean, is that something you've helped maybe clients with, or people you meet, to change the narrative? And if so, how do you support that?
Well, yeah. Well, a really good example is if a student's diagnosed with dyslexia, there's immediately this feeling of shame, and I can't do this, and it's just awful. But when you look, and actually the amount of shame, there's been research done, the amount of shame as somebody who has reading difficulties in school is equivalent to somebody who has been molested. Just because they're constantly being told day after day at school that they can't do it, they're not good enough, that they're stupid, even though that's not like a direct message that's given, but that's what's internalized. So, but if you look at the really amazing part is if you look at like engineers, NASA scientists, people that go to MIT, most of them have dyslexia because their brains are designed differently to where the engineering and that part of the, I don't even know what it is because my brain is definitely not designed like that. But whatever makes those people, those engineers tick is unique to a dyslexic brain. So what most of us would think of as something really negative, they're like, heck, we want those people. So I think that's true in all parts of life. Just because this group doesn't think you fit in, or that you're not good enough, or that you don't have the right qualifications, if you go to another group, that's what they're seeking. So you just have to find your group. You just have to kind of fine tune where you're going and what your expectations are. Because who wouldn't want to be a rocket scientist? That's really cool, right?
Yes, it's amazing. I'd love to be a rocket scientist. That's a good point. That's such a good point. And, it's well, I'm not surprised you're a life coach. I'm not surprised that you do good work with your clients. It's very inspiring. It's such a good point as what you're pointing towards with environments or the group of people that you align with, because I'm thinking like, instead of focusing on being liked by everyone, what you really want is to be loved by the true tribe, the people that you really want to be with, versus trying to avoid being rejected by someone who you might not actually want to call a friend. So in a way, what you're saying is, seek out the like-minded people, seek out the people that appreciate you for who you are, and possibly see the potential.
Yeah. I mean, and that was really hard in my small town, because there's only so many people, and there's, not very many different ways to think there. And I had this one student in particular where I just kept telling her, wait till you get to college. You will find your people. You will be able to bloom there, because it's really hard in this town, but there's so many more people to choose from, and you can gravitate toward the people that you really are jiving with. And sure enough, I would talk to her after she graduated, and she's like, yeah, I just had to get out of here. So yeah, sometimes we have to expand our horizons, and it's scary, and it can feel really uncomfortable, but that's the growth zone. That's what happens. You have to get a little uncomfortable in order to go there.
Yeah, I can see that. So okay. So obviously, changing your environment or connecting with more people that are looking, for the person you are. What else can one do to help change or transform the narrative?
Well, going back to the whole perspectives aren't real, they're just the stories we tell ourselves. I think we need to change our own personal narrative that we tell ourselves. And that can be through changing how you perceive your difference, and to where you can really accept it and then honor it and use it as your fuel to serve your purpose. But it can also be changing the perspectives of what other people think of you. So I remember, because I grew up in a small town, when I went to college, it felt like everybody was staring at me. And that happens a lot when I go out. Like, people look at me because I'm in a wheelchair. But I got really uncomfortable with it. So what I started to tell myself is, well, they're just looking at me because I'm beautiful. And that just shift in perspective to where they're not looking at me because I'm weird and I stand out and I'm different, and that was negative. I turned it to where I'm telling myself, oh, well, they're just adoring me and idolizing me, and that's okay. For whatever reason, that kind of stare was okay, but the perception that they were staring at me because I was weird and different and, was bad. So that just helped change how I looked at things, and then I wasn't so disturbed by all the staring. Just those little triggers, those little shifts in the story that you tell yourself can make huge differences.
Of course, absolutely. I mean, because well, here's what I tend to look at when it comes to this. Really, your experience comes from the meaning you assign things, right? Which is kind of what you demonstrated, that the looks are the same. It's just the narrative, the meaning you assign them that changed. And because you changed the meaning, your experience changed. And the really cool thing about that is you made that happen, right? You stepped into your own control or ownership around that and said, I'm going to change the meaning here. Versus asking people, please don't stare, don't do this, don't do that, because you might influence them, you might reach some of them, but you can't control it. But this thing you could control. That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great one. So um, maybe you've already said this, but I'm still like, again, I said I can easily talk about life purposes and stuff like this. I think it's so powerful. I know for a fact I've had clients, I've got friends. Whenever I talk about life purpose, people go like, yeah. I know it's important. I know I need to have an ikigai and all of those things. But how do I figure out what's my purpose? Can you shed some light on that? What's your process or the typical thing that you would take someone through?
Yeah. So I think at least where I got held up when I was looking for it myself, first of all, when you are so intent on finding something, like the same thing when you're trying to find your, Mr. or Miss Right, it's like that's when you don't find it because you're looking too
True.
hard. So when
True.
you start to not focus on it as much, I think it kind of shows up for you some. Um, but also when I was looking, like all the experts said, well, just do what makes you happy. And I'm like, but at that point, it's like, I don't even know what makes me happy at this point. And continuing to search for what makes me happy is making me less and less happy. So this isn't working. And I realized later, after I had found my purpose, that what I was looking for was joy and not happiness. Because for me, happiness, somebody gives you flowers and that makes you happy. But then, your cat makes a mess or chews up something, and then that happiness is gone. But joy will stay with you. Joy is a choice that you make and that you can make every day, that no matter what circumstances, no matter what life throws your way, you're going to continue to feel that joy and that fulfillment and that purpose. So that's what I was seeking all along. I just didn't know it. And there was a point where I didn't even know if joy was real or if it was a myth, because I never really felt like I had known it. And then, stepping into my purpose and getting my spiritual, my seeking of God and that kind of thing in order for me also really helped me to find and live joy. And happiness is great. I love being happy. Like I want to, experience happiness also. But that meaning that I was looking for was linked to joy and not the short-term happiness.
I love that you shared that because I specifically, this is one of the things that I caught on your Instagram, IGTV side of things. And I really like that because, how you say that happiness is the reaction of something versus joy being the true essence of it. So are you kind of, I get that. I get that being aligned and tapping into your purpose can offer you that sense of joy versus just happiness. I often end up saying, if you want to be happy, well, go to a party, right? I mean, because then
Right.
you'll have that.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is, as you would classify it, is joy or peace. And it's
Yeah.
different. It feels different.
It feels very different.
So can you
And
use, yeah, you go, please.
no, go ahead.
Okay. So can you use joy to figure out your purpose? Or am I now falling into the trap of don't look so hard, don't try so hard?
Yeah, I think partly, but I think that it kind of is coming like a marriage of purpose and joy. Like I think when you find purpose, you get joy, and I think if you feel joy, your purpose is there. You may not even realize that you're fulfilling your purpose until you take a closer look at it. But I think with one comes the other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we have a third screen in our stream there. Well, let's go. Okay, so maybe you said this, but for me, I kind of like to go even deeper on this. How can you determine? How can you tell if it's happiness or joy? Is there, based on your own experience, is there a clear distinction in some way?
Well, for me, the happiness is short term. it's
Mm.
fleeting. Like
Mm.
you can feel happy in one moment, and then, your boss tells you they want to talk to you, and it's like, oh, and you have this sense of dread, and the happiness is gone. But now with joy, you can feel joy, and your boss tells you they want to talk to you, and you still feel joy. There may be
Mm.
some trepidation, but there's still that continuous feeling of joy. Like it's like, okay, I can take whatever this is. It's not going to steal my joy. I can still move on and cope and just handle it.
That's good. And that's a good distinction. Thank you for clarifying that and sharing that. I think that's very good.
Yeah.
So purpose. Okay. So not necessarily looking so hard for your purpose, but rather allowing joy to guide you, I guess, is kind of way to notice where you're on purpose, and the purpose can then lead to joy, which is more satisfaction, I guess, in life in general.
Right. And I think joy, and then also the examination of your inner self and what makes you different, and what have you been hiding, or what have you been kind of pretending that isn't there. What part of you do you deny because you're
Mm.
trying to fit in with this societal rule that you're supposed to go to college and find your job and your meaning when you're 22, when your brain isn't even done developing, and
Hmm.
and then you go and get a job and a career that a lot of times you don't like. When you follow those steps that society says you're supposed to follow, and then you still kind of realize that there's got to be more to this. Um, and then when you look at yourself and see, okay, well, what part of me did I have to deny or hide to follow society's rules? I think that is where your purpose is.
Mm.
So if you can examine that part of yourself that allowed you to, or that you had to hide, that allowed you to fit in and comply, that's what we need to look at closer.
I like that you said that again, because it's what I said before in the beginning of the conversation, that I like how you're bringing that up, that look at your shadow side, or the thing that you might have felt ashamed of or trying to hide, because it's a clue to also your uniqueness and your purpose. I think that is such a powerful way to look at purpose and finding that, because a lot of times, at least I'm talking about me here, I might only focus on the good stuff, the light stuff, right? The things like, oh, I love this, I like that. Those are things are positive. I want more of that. So I guess, more
Right.
purpose, more passion around that. But you're actually right. There in my life, of course, there's been sides to my personality, or me as a human and a character, that I might not have always allowed to be there. And in that, I risk missing out on the really, really great things.
Yeah, and I think we all have that stuff that we hide, because if we were like I think especially when we're younger, we kind of learn that we have to deny part of ourselves, or hide or shun part of ourselves, in order to, again, going back to school and education, to be closer to that round peg that fits in the round hole, because
Hmm.
nobody wants to not fit in that round hole. So, and because it's happened at such a young age, we may not even realize that there was part of ourselves that we did that to. And it's harder to go back and kind of rewire ourselves to think that that part of ourselves is okay, and not to be pushed to the side. But that's the stuff that we need to find. That's the stuff that will that we need to unlock, to find the key to joy and purpose and fulfillment and peace.
Yeah. So what's the one thing, or the things that you think, or you've come across as the biggest misunderstanding we have around purpose, for example? Do your students, your clients tell you anything around that? Is there something that you have confusions around?
Well, I think some people think that they're too old to find their purpose, like they're too set in their ways. It's like, no, if you're still breathing, it's still a search that's worth undertaking.
Yeah.
And then also, I think we just need to change the narrative about differences. Differences aren't bad, they're just different. No judgment. They're not necessarily positive or negative. They're just different. And if we can let go of the judgment of differences, then I think that will allow that personal scavenger hunt to be easier to go about doing.
That's a good point. I mean, I would imagine being in your role, as a counselor or psychologist or even life coach, being neutral, or at the very least, non-judgmental, not judging, is a super important trait or characteristics.
Yeah, when I was doing my training for the counseling piece of school psychology, they taught us we don't give opinions. We just ask questions that help people look at things in a different way, or from a different perspective, or a different side. Very rarely do you give opinions, because my opinion shouldn't matter to you. It's your opinion that's what's important.
Yeah, I like that, and that's why I think what you get to do together with your students is powerful that way, because I think that you're influencing them in a positive way, even if they might not understand it today. As you said, you're planting seeds.
Yes.
Where they get to have a conversation with an adult who might not, isn't judging them, right? You're allowing them to be who they are. You're even allowing their differences be the very thing that they, can honor or appreciate. That is powerful. That's, I think, what we are missing in a lot of our interactions and relationships.
Yeah, because people just kind of automatically put themselves in a conversation, or put themselves in their values, and what they think is important. They kind of interject that. And when you're going through something to where you need to kind of examine things, you don't need to worry about the other person's opinion on top of everything else. You have enough of that embedded inside to kind of figure out without adding more to it. You don't need more layers of judgment and opinions.
No, precisely that. You mentioned your own spiritual awakening or journey a little bit. Does that play a role, you think, in purpose and joy?
Oh, for me, absolutely. Like, I know that, because when I was young and I had the diagnosis, I can remember, I think, our memories, as much as I pushed together one memory, but it may have been from a couple different situations. But I can remember going to healing ceremonies, or healing services, and I from my parents' perspective, it didn't work because I was still disabled. I was still not walking. From my perspective, first of all, they didn't necessarily work because I wasn't a mistake. And secondly, who says they didn't work? Because I'm still here. I'm still functioning at a very high level. A lot of times by this age with my disability, a lot of people have breathing tubes, feeding tubes. They're hooked up to a lot of different things. And I don't have any of that at this point. My muscles get tired, but I'm not in chronic pain. Like, to me, I am a miracle. And especially with the pregnancy of my son, I definitely, to me, there's no doubt that there is a God. Because when they were afraid that my lungs would be compromised with my pregnancy, and my lungs were actually stronger during my pregnancy because I was getting pulmonary function tests and the numbers were going up. And the nurse at one point was like, "That's really weird." It's like, yeah, that's God. So
That's nice. That's a good story as well.
yeah.
And did I catch that correctly? Have you always had a spiritual side to your life?
I did. I mean, I went to catechism. I grew up Catholic. I went to catechism, but we weren't in church regularly. We weren't I think maybe some of my parents' spirituality kind of went away when they didn't see God working the way they wanted God to work. Mm-hmm. Which I can't blame them, because they didn't want me to die. They didn't want anything bad to happen to me. They didn't want me to suffer. It must have been so difficult as a parent to see your child go through that. But for me, I just kind of always had this, I knew God was there. It's only been recently that I really started to delve into the Bible and that kind of thing to really strengthen my relationship with God. And through that, I've definitely found even more joy.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I noticed you're a speaker at an upcoming summit or an event, right?
Yes, it's next weekend. It's the this Strong Summit, or I can't even remember the name of it. I'm so embarrassed.
No, it's fine. Let me bring that up because I think I have it here somewhere. Hang on, because I thought it sounded quite interesting, so I just wanted to have a look at that. Hang on. Oh, hang on. I'm just going to go to your Instagram because I know it's on your link tree.
Yes.
That way we can, if anyone's interested in listening to that, then obviously they can. Hang on. There we go, Sarah. I mean, and on that topic, I was going to say, I have a final question I wanted to ask you. And before I do, I kind of also wanted to, give you a chance to tell people where they can connect with you. Is there anything you would like them to pay extra attention to? I mean, I know you've got this really powerful program for finding their purpose. You might want to tell, me and our audience about that a bit.
Yes, so the program is called Destination Tomorrow. And I think before we can find our purpose, the first step is we have to be able to visualize kind of what we want in life. And this is a program that gives you 3 different techniques to help visualize that. And it kind of works as like this laser focus to where you may not know how you're going to get there. And sometimes you may not even know what it looks like. For me, I made a vision board 15, 20 years ago. And I put a lot of words and phrases on it. And I still use that vision board because it has evolved with me over time. The things that meant something then meant something completely different now. And most of it is words and phrases. I'm more of a word person than a visual person, so that may be why. But without that as that first step, I don't know that I would be where I am now. So I kind of put this together in a program to where you have the 3 different techniques. The third one is the vision board, to kind of give you a map so you know where you're going. You don't know how to get there yet, and that's okay. That will come, but this is at least the map, so you have the visualization of where you're going.
That's great.
That's Destination Tomorrow.
Yeah, and they can access that from your website, right?
Yes, sarahmanuel.com.
Yeah, and hang on, maybe I'll have a look. And you got it also in your link tree on your Instagram bio. I know that James, he ran the It's Strong Together Summit, which is
Strong Summit,
So, Staying Strong. Yeah, that's right. Staying Strong. So that's the summit you're going to be a speaker at as well.
Yes.
And all of these links I saw, they're in your link tree on your Instagram. And for anyone who's listening, what's your handle on Instagram?
Sarah Manuel 35. And
There we
on
go.
Facebook, it's Manuel Sarah 35.
Yeah, just mix it up a bit. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
then
Where?
also this week, my children's book came out. I haven't even put that on social media yet because it was just kind of like a very unceremoniously it came out. But it's called Differences Are Dynamite. So it's kind of teaching these same things that we've talked about, but at a level that kids can access, so that we try to avoid writing all those narratives that they have to go through later in life to kind of untangle.
I saw that because I went to your website and I was like, children's book, and I clicked it and I couldn't tell, is this your book? Because it was a quiet one. It was a sleeper. I was kind of like,
Yes.
is this? But it's wonderful. I'm glad to hear it. It's your book. Congratulations.
Yeah, I started it when I was in grad school, and I've just been kind of thinking about, oh, I need to get it illustrated, and then it would kind of get pushed to the back burner again. And I finally had it done, and it's out now, and there's also going to be a Spanish version available in a week or two. So it's very exciting. Something
That's wonderful.
that I've been birthing for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the completion of that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So, okay, cool. So, as I said, I mean, obviously, I have to say, please check Sarah out, and especially the Destination Tomorrow kit. I think that is a powerful program about helping yourself to find purpose, and getting into all of those mindsets. I would imagine using tools and starting that journey. I think it's such a powerful one, and I had a look at that package. It looks amazing. So if anyone's interested in that, well, it's a no-brainer. Just go to Sarah's website and go at it. Sarah, a final question. Say that you have the mic to the whole world. The whole world is listening. What's the one message that you would like them to hear? What's the thing that you would like to share with them?
I think it would be that your circumstances don't have to dictate your reality. You can take whatever's been given to you and use it for good. You can decide the story you're going to tell yourself about that. You are in control. You get to make decisions about your life and about the story you're going to tell about your life. So again, don't let your circumstances dictate your reality. You get to dictate your reality.
That is so well said. Thank you so much for saying that and sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you said that? I find that hard to believe. That sounded really, really powerful.
It's the first time I said it today, but I have said it in the past.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that it sounded rehearsed or anything.
Right.
It just it just, that was very well said. Like as a whole sentence. That's amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Sarah, we're coming up on the hour here, and this 60 minutes together, they really flew by, I have to say. But it was easy. I knew it. We're talking about happiness, joy, we're talking about purpose, all those topics I just love getting into. So I knew time was going to fly. I personally want to thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure that the audience that do tune in every week, they enjoyed this as well. It was really nice to share your story with them, and especially your journey on life purpose, and especially I like the distinction with looking at some of the things that you might have been hiding in the past and allowing them to come out and play, because they could very well be part of that purpose. That was a powerful distinction for me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Just like you, I love to talk about purpose and joy and everything. So this was so much fun. I had a great time.
Great. I'm glad. Well, and if anyone else out there enjoys talking about joy, happiness and purpose, then obviously connect with Sarah, keep that conversation going. I highly recommend it. That's great. All right, Sarah. Again, thank you for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you a great day.
Thank you, Adam. You as well.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. I really, really did. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sarah was amazing. She obviously she talks about joy, happiness, and purpose. All those juicy things that I know a lot of us we are looking for. Now, if you watched from YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That way, every time we go live, you will be notified. And if you're on Facebook watching this, make sure that you're liking my Facebook page, Adam Kowalik, Business Mindset Coach. That way, again, you're going to be notified and you make sure not to miss anything. Next week, tune in. It's going to be the same place at the same time. I think. Yes, I'm quite sure it is. And yeah, great. Thank you for joining this. If you have questions to me, if you have questions to Sarah, don't hesitate to connect. Send DMs, send emails, connect with us. That's a great way to continue this conversation. If we touched upon a topic that was really fascinating to you, make sure to keep that conversation going. All right, I've taken up enough time for tonight. Thank you for watching. See you next week.